And good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host today. I'm the president and CEO of the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association, better known as the BMDA. I'm joined in studio today by the president of the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce, my friend Scott Meske. Scotty, welcome.
Morning, Brian. Thanks for having me today.
I'm glad you could join me today. Here, it's a beautiful day on the Sunset Strip. You want to call it that?
Sure. Yeah, it's we call it chamber weather. A little cool yet, but hey,
weather.
Give it time. Give it time.
I know you guys have a lot of sway, but I'm not sure that you've got the pull to make the weather go the way it goes.
Hey, I'll take blame for the rain too. Come on.
Well, folks, welcome again to the Dakota Housing Network. We're going to start off today's show as we do every show, and that is a look around town, a look at Bismarck-Mandan by the numbers. At the BMDA, we produce a document, more specifically Judy Sauter, who is our Director of Marketing and Research, produces a document each month. We call it the Economy at a Glance. You can find this on our website at www.bmda.org, and it's a collection of economic indicators. I mean, Scotty, I think you could agree that a lot of people gauge the performance of the community's economy by what they see when they drive around. I mean, don't you think that people drive around, they see construction happening, and that's their gauge, that's their barometer.
Yeah, absolutely. They believe what they see, and rather than what they feel. And I think for a lot of community leaders, a lot of folks in the community, business leaders, and residents driving around, you always get asked from your relatives or friends from out of town, "How's it going in there? How's it going? What you doing?" And you say, well, hey, we got a lot of construction. We got a lot of cranes in town. We've got, or the other side, we got a lot of for sale signs.
That's right.
So it is an indication. And what you've done here, which I think is very, very helpful, is put some data into our feelings and what we see. You put some data down here, which is very helpful.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about one of those first indicators. And that's workforce. I mean, Scott, you came here from Williston. You know all about an employees market, obviously.
Oh yeah.
But so now we look at Bismarck-Mandan and we look at spring numbers. Look at March of 2017, and number of jobs, number of bodies in that workforce right now, about 72,800 people. That's up from where it was, the previous month. Mm-hmm. And then you look at unemployment rate, and then unemployment rate now is 3.3%. And I think if you go back to your macro econ classes in college, and you remember full employment, full employment is supposed to be when everybody who wants a job has a job, right?
Right.
And that number in theory is right about 5%.
Yep, on the average, 5%.
And so we're sitting here at 3.3%, and you and I both know, that being a March number, we get in a building season, that gets full swing, that number's going lower.
Absolutely.
Number's going lower.
It's a pretty tight market out there.
So when we look at how those numbers compare to even last year at this time, if someone asks us, okay, well it's 3.3 now, but oil slowed down, ag has slowed down. Right. I think it's a different market. No, it's actually lower. The unemployment rate now, being 3.3% in March of 17, is actually lower than where it was in March of 16, exactly 1 year ago, when it was 3.6%. And in terms of you drive around, you look at the now hiring signs like you talked about. Mm-hmm. There are about 2,350 open jobs between Burley and Morton County. 2,350. Wow. You and I would both agree there's probably not 2,350 unemployed people in probably a 4-county area to fill those jobs.
Right. Not here. No.
So now we got to figure out a way to fill those jobs, and again, so it's an employees market.
It is definitely an employees market, and the employers and my members at the chamber and other businesses that I talk to. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's from bus drivers, which we heard yesterday talk about school transportation issues in the city of Bismarck. Even if they could hire more, afford it, they can't find them. And so, or whether it's one of our healthcare facilities, it definitely is an employees market right now.
So now, I think a really low unemployment like that is kind of a double-edged sword for a community because, it's great because your community is performing well and people have jobs. And if you want to work, there's that opportunity. But when it comes to then the employer side, you've seen some examples recently in Fargo. I just saw a downtown restaurant in Fargo closed last week because they didn't have enough workers.
Oh my gosh!
I know you've seen this firsthand.
During
your time in Williston.
Yep.
And so I think there's got to be a happy medium. There's got to be a middle there where we fill those jobs. Everyone's happy, because if that happens, then when we get into how much money is being spent in the economy, You think about that. Let's say we had 2,300 more people in the workforce filling those jobs.
That's houses.
That's 2,000 more people, like you said, buying houses.
Taxes, yeah.
Doing those things and spending money. So when we look at people, a lot of times people ask, well, when we look at the economy, are there people still spending as much money as there was previously? And if we look at the best gauge we have of that, at least in Bismarck and Mandan, are sales tax collections.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the only gauges that is a consistent barometer of how we're doing in the economy here.
And so when we look at sales tax collections, when we look at March and February and January, the numbers we have here are a little bit old, but when we look before, sales tax collections in Bismarck actually were up in January, they were down in February, and then they were up in March. And so, yeah, I mean, now the February dip was a pretty steep one, but that can be because of one less weekend. That can be that can be bad weather. Any number of things can do that. But in terms of, you've got many more retail members, obviously, at the Chamber than we do at the BMDA. I mean, what are you hearing, Scotty? I mean, what are your retail members talking to you about the climate, the feeling, what they're seeing in terms of, kind of this first quarter of the year?
Well, again, I think some of it's feeling, and the feeling is there's a lot more activity. And the feeling is optimistic. We had our Economic Outlook Forum here a couple of months ago, and the feeling from our members that responded to the survey was they're optimistic. And they're optimistic that activity is increasing, opportunities are increasing, and that we're still a growing economy. But I do think there is some challenges out there, and I think some of the online industries that are continuing to take away. So our message is continuing, shop local, buy local, support our local industries and our local retailers.
So now, when we talk about, again, if we fill those open jobs, they're in the economy, they're spending money, they're circulating those dollars. Aside from shopping locally and shopping at local retailers and going to the grocery store, doing all those things, one of the things they also do is they take vacations, and they fly out of Bismarck and Mandan. And when you look at the economy at a glance, one of those other indicators are the passenger boardings.
Absolutely.
Now, remember, folks, at the Bismarck Airport in 2015 set their all-time record in terms of the number of passenger boardings. Last year, they broke that record. And if we look through March of this year, they're down a little bit, but when we're down a little bit, we're talking less than 1,000 people. Year-to-date through March of 17 through this year, we're at 64,264 passenger boardings. Last year at the same time, during that record pace, they were at 65,026. So you get a big event. We get some lower fares. I mean, I know there's some fare sales going on.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Those numbers will swing, Scotty, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to swing. And I do think it's a tribute to what is going on in our economy here, and that people still want to be here. What's going on? We're in the capital city region. Two great communities joined by a river. It's really, there's a lot going on here. And I think as our economy stabilizes and starts to diversify a little bit more, we're going to find our growth patterns continuing to increase.
What I want residents or I want listeners to understand is that there are options from the Bismarck Airport. I grew up here. This is not the same airport where you can only fly to Minneapolis and to Denver. Right now, you can fly, I believe it's between 8 and 9 times a day on Delta to Minneapolis-St. Paul. You can fly 4 to 5 times a day to Denver on United. You can fly somewhat less regularly to Denver on Frontier.
Right.
American is now flying daily to Chicago O'Hare as well as Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
And now Allegiant's flying to not only Las Vegas, but Las Vegas, Phoenix Mesa, as well as Orlando.
Okay.
So just out of this one airport, you've got all these options. And that is a big, big deal for a community our size, especially located where we are.
Absolutely. It gives travelers, relatives, businesses an incredible number of options.
Absolutely. So, Scotty, we're coming up on the first break of on the show here. So we're going to go out for break number 1, and when we come back, we'll be here on the Dakota Housing Network. And welcome back, folks, to the Dakota Housing Network, I think is how it's pronounced, Scott?
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's how it goes here on Super Talk 1270. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host. I'm the president of the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association, joined in studio today by my friend Scott Meske, who is the president of the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce. And, Scotty, we just talked about Bismarck-Mandan, I mean, by the numbers. Looking at those economic indicators, because as we discussed, a lot of our opinions about how our community is doing are formed on our own personal experiences. It's how many people are at church. Are they building new houses in my neighborhood? Are restaurants busy? Friday, Saturday night, stuff like that.
Right.
And I think that you and I would agree the answer to all those things is yes, yes, and yes. I mean, right now,
and how our school classrooms are doing, and the fact that none of our schools continue to be big enough, I guess. Well, so the numbers there are just staggering.
And here's a quick plug from the BMD and the Chamber for Bismarck Public Schools. And this is both for BPS and for Mandan Public Schools. But when you think about the community and you think about the cities of North Dakota, I think the quick assumption is to say that Fargo's got to have the biggest school district, right? They're the biggest city, they got to have everybody.
Yeah.
No. Bismarck Public Schools has the most students. It has the biggest district of any district in the state, K-12. And we know that their demographer is projecting they're going to grow by, 1,800 to 1,900 students over the next 5 school years?
13% over the next 5 school years.
So now they're going to add on to Horizon and to Wachter and to Simley, and those projects all broke ground here in the last week.
Yep, in the last week. Yep.
And then they'll wrap those 3 up, and then in the next year they'll work on the additions to Century and Bismarck High.
Right.
And then over here in Mandan Public Schools is putting on about a $4 million expansion onto Mandan Middle School. Mm-hmm. And then the Light of Christ Catholic Schools in Bismarck-Mandan are currently in the process of a capital campaign trying to raise more than $40 million for a new high school campus as well as additions to some of their existing schools. So all those indicators all look good for our community, right?
They do. I mean, no matter what you think and how long you've lived here, we're growing. And, the message that I've continued to say over the past year is growth is good. The challenge we have is to how we keep up with it, how we pay for it, and, do we just continue to plan for a 3 to 5% growth over the next in perpetuity? I mean, at some point in time, we're going to max out, maybe, but maybe not. But I do give credit to the planners, metro planning organizations, the folks that have to try and project where we're going to grow, how much we're going to grow, and the schools both school systems do a great job of that.
Well, Scott, you're right in that. And folks, you can't see this, but I've heard Scott say growth is good a number of times. And if you're old enough to get this reference, it's almost like hearing Gordon Gekko right across from you. He lowers his voice, he kind of nods his head at you, kind of like he's giving you a direct message. But he's right. Growth is good, but there are challenges.
There are.
But there are no doubt there are challenges. But we have organizations like the Chamber that are helping address those challenges. Now, when we talk about the Chamber, Scotty, 1,400 members?
About right around 1,400 members. Just a little bit of background. We were formed in 1906, and the Bismarck side was. And interesting, I did a little research. There's actually families in our region here that have ties to the formation of our Chamber of Commerce, still to this day.
That's cool.
So it is really cool, and I'm one of those. I love to just dig a little bit. So if I come and visit your business, one of the first things I'm going to ask you is tell me about your business. Tell me how you got started. Tell me your story, because that gives me a connection. So I kind of like that. But anyway, so 1906. In 1990, the Mandan Chamber of Commerce and the Bismarck Chamber of Commerce decided to blend. I don't call it a merge. I don't call it a takeover. I've adopted the term blend. So we decided to blend, and so we're made up of my board of directors has 12 members from the west side of the river and 12 members from the east side of the river, which is actually how it's stated in the bylaws. It doesn't, it's not specific. Hey, I mean so I have those that were written, but I have such an appreciation for what it took to do that. We continue to respect that today. So I'm excited. We have a lot of sectors of our businesses represented, and that's really how we're governed. So I, as the president, I have a staff of 9 that do everything from membership to events to communications to committees. We've got a bunch of committees that have an impact, and that's how we get input from our members and from the community. So that's kind of a basic structure of how we're...
Scotty, let's talk about the committees for a second,
Sure.
Because I'm fortunate enough to serve on a couple of those, and I know you guys are going through a process right now of looking at that committee structure and looking to see what makes the most sense for this chamber, for this community. I mean, where we are today. But those committees, like you said, are truly the way that you're gathering input that then floats up from that level up to the board of directors and helps shape the overall direction of the chamber. So just talk about a couple of those. I mean, talk about a couple of those committees.
Sure.
Yeah, you tell me. Tell me I've got an idea.
Right.
You tell me.
So everything we do is kind of derived from our strategic plan. We spent about every 3 years, we sit down and kind of look at the direction the chamber is going, the issues we're involved in, the areas of the community where we need to be involved in, and that's the base, okay? And that's kind of our roadmap. From there, we formulate the committees. And so each committee that we do, a standing committee, a task force, or a working group, has to have some connection to one of those strategic pillars. And I think one of the ones that I first moved here a year ago this week actually is my anniversary, so was the local issues committee. And I, knowing that advocacy and public policy is one of the core tenets of a chamber, I'm like, where's this local issues committee fit in? Well, I'll tell you where it fits in. It fits in right at the top.
Absolutely.
We represent, as you do, Brian, we represent 8 different governing bodies. 2 county commissions, 2 city commissions, 2 park boards, and 2 school boards. I mean, that's the scope that we have. So the question is, how do we know what issues are important? Everybody's got some issue that's different. So through the local issues committee, we're able to vet ideas, concepts, programs, issues pertinent to all of our communities and all of our scope here, and it's a great process.
Well, and to Scotty's point, as an outsider and as someone who sits on that committee and has been in those meetings, I mean, last Tuesday we had a meeting that went, almost an hour and a half,
right?
And we covered a lot of different topics.
We did,
and I think what's most critical and most appreciated about that committee in particular is that there are no stupid questions. There are no ignorant questions. There's nothing that's off limits. It is a critical discussion.
Yeah.
But in the end, everyone knows that we're working towards the same end. We are working towards the same goal.
Yep.
The questions that come up, the challenges that are issued are done so to strengthen the position of the chamber, are done so to make sure that whatever comes out is as strong and as well vetted as possible.
Yeah.
And you see that in the end product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so, the process, the committees, they each have a charter. They each have a chair and a vice chair. And we just before I came over here, Brian, we met with the chair of the local issues committee and the vice chair to say, okay, what are the next issues? They might be something as simple as an update on the I-94 construction. It might be something as complicated as the new Renaissance zone laws that passed. It might be something as ongoing as the infrastructure task force that Brian and I, you and I serve. But so where it goes from there is the local issues committee then will take it and say, should we take a formal position? Because sometimes this information, sometimes they want an actual position from the board, support, non-support, neutral. The local issues committee will then recommend to the executive committee. I have a 5-person executive committee, and we rotate the chairs between Bismarck and Mandan each year. Which is, again, still sticking true to the very first set of bylaws from 1990. And then from there, we make a recommendation to the full board, and then they can debate and accept it or move forward. So it's a very good process. We hit a lot of different sectors of the business community and get a lot of input before the chamber takes a formal position.
Scotty, you have a number of committees. Local issues, obviously, for me personally, is one that always comes top of mind.
Yep.
You've got a great government affairs committee.
Yeah.
Talk to just a little bit here before the next break about some of the other committees that you have.
Sure, absolutely. We have a number of standing committees, and I think right now what we're doing is going through each one of those committees to make sure that they all line up with our strategic plans, but that's just something we do internally periodically. So we have the ambassador committee. We go out and welcome new businesses, cut ribbons, and mentor new businesses that come in. We have the military affairs committee, which helps military veterans, families, and programs in the area. We also have the agriculture committee, which, again, deals with another huge sector of our industry here, the agriculture sector. And then we have the business and excellence in education committee. We put on the Celebrate Bismarck-Mandan program. The Teacher of the Year awards were just presented this past week, and I'll tell you, if you can ever get to one of those, that is incredible. So the chamber does things like that. So those are a lot of our major standing committees, but again, I think if you're interested, there's usually a place for you to jump in and help.
Now, if there is a listener out there right now, Scotty, who's hearing that and they're talking and they're thinking to themselves, I'd like to get more involved. The best place for them to start. If they're a member of the chamber.
Yep.
What's the best way for them to say, hey, I'm going to raise my hand. I want to get more involved. How do they do it?
Well, I think the easiest way is either you can give a call to the chamber at 223-5660, or if you're a member of the chamber, come to our membership mixers. Meet some of the staff, ask some questions, because the networking is a big part of it. And by the way, we do have one of our bigger membership mixers tonight over at McQuaid's Distributing. So those are probably the easiest ways.
Sounds good.
You bet.
All right, Scotty, so we're going to go into the next break here on Super Talk 1270. But when we come back, we're going to talk more about the chamber and what it is they're doing next on the Dakota Housing Network.
Yeah, no kidding.
And we're back here on the Dakota Housing Network. My name is Brian Ritter. I'm your host today. I'm with the Bismarck-Mandan Development Association. My guest on today's show, Mr. Scott Meske, who is the president of the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce. And Scotty, we just spent now the last segment talking about the chamber and really who is the chamber. And it's staff, it's elected officials or elected leadership in the chamber. It's 1,400 members. It truly is the community. The chamber is a reflection of Bismarck-Mandan.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a little quick history lesson, which is a speech that I give to groups and organizations about the history of chambers. And actually, in New York, in a coffee house in 1765, even before we became a country, there were 200 New York merchants that got together and said, Britain, we're not going to pay this tax. We need a voice. And literally started the New York Chamber of Commerce back then. And it was merchants coming together to speak with one voice. And that's still what we do today. Sometimes it's tough. Like, I'll tell you, being a large chamber like we are, and we're the third largest in North Dakota, I think Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo cheats because they have 3 cities. And Grand Forks has an Air Force base. But hey, we got the state capital in our region. We're doing pretty good. But, I think one of the challenges we have is trying to speak for all of our members. You can't. We have large members. We have small retail shops. We have medium size. We have home-based businesses. We have nonprofit organizations and groups that are part of our organization. So the challenge is trying to, especially as we talk about advocacy and policymaking, is to try and give everyone a voice.
So Scotty, how do you balance it? And I know that question's almost rhetorical, because it is a tough challenge. It is a tough act, because like you said, you have such a spectrum of members, and a small member might feel differently about a policy issue or about how we're going to pay for roads than a big member is. So how do you as a chamber balance it?
Yeah, I think one of the things we do is we use our leadership, we use our board, we use our committees. If there's an issue coming up, and again, say what you want about parking meters. Let's just use that because it failed. But we have some larger members who that's not even on their radar. And we have some smaller members, retail downtown type members in Mandan and Bismarck, that it is a huge issue to. So we need to listen to them and give them a forum to vet. And so one of the things we like to do is go out prior to a legislative session or prior to a big issue and try to get some feedback, either through our committees or through surveys.
Scott, let's talk about an issue in particular and to your retail members now, and it's something you and I have talked about kind of off and on. It's something that Bismarck Mayor Mike Seminary has talked about at a few of his coffees with the mayor is, when you think back to some of the retail revolutions that have happened in the past, Bismarck-Mandan is no stranger to that. If you go back to the late 70s, early 80s, Gateway Mall was constructed, Kirkwood Mall basically doubled in size. And we were not immune to that exodus of retail from downtowns out into suburban shopping centers. And the community adjusted, and we've done a great job of revitalizing those downtowns. Now there's another retail revolution, that's getting a lot of traction, and that is the impact of services like Amazon. It is online shopping versus, again, shop in that traditional brick-and-mortar shopping experience. Is that something you're hearing more and more from about your members? Is that something that's more and more on your radar?
Yeah, it is. But for instance, when I go around and talk to members, I do ask about that. I do, especially if you're a retail organization. I ask, do you feel the impact of an online presence of competition? And I get mixed reviews, actually. One of the things I find out here in North Dakota, maybe it's a North Dakota thing, is that our business owners love taking pride in customer service. And so, I'm curious. I see a lot of ads about, Car Soup and some of these online car places. So talk to one of our car dealers here in our region. And I asked him, do you feel any impact? And he's like, no, because we're the best customer service place in town. So they take a lot of pride in that personal connection. So the question is, how can we make sure that we make enough personal connections, that we network the people who want goods with the people who are selling goods? And we have a bunch of ways through our chamber connection and other communication tools and networking that we can help. So I do hear that, Brian. Mm-hmm. I'm saying it's probably not as. Again, I don't have any data. I can't support that, but I hear mixed bag on the retail and online stuff.
I bring that topic up because it's getting more and more traction. Whether you're reading, media locally, whether you're reading media regionally or nationally, you're seeing it all over the place. Look what happened in Fargo West Acres. Their Sears closed.
Yeah.
You go up to Grand Forks, they lost their Macy's. Mm-hmm. Bismarck has been performing very well, but we're certainly not immune to those challenges. We've seen some smaller examples of those things happening. Mm-hmm. And when I've asked around, and we've talked to some of those developers, some of those commercial real estate brokers, what we hear is that, again, go back to the previous issue we discussed, it's a balancing act.
Yeah, it is.
Those who are successful are the ones who have not simply said, we're just going to be an online retailer, and we're not just going to be a brick and mortar shop. The ones who have been able to find that balance between providing that customer service for those people you talked about in person, but still having the convenience of, hey, I want to be able to get this right now, those are the ones that have seemed to have found that middle path to success.
Yeah. The place where I get my haircut, I won't say what that is. They have a significant online presence that I can make an appointment and actually, pick my hairstylist, whatever. But they also have a place you can walk in, and it's kind of that balance. So I think we're going to have to watch this going forward. And I don't know what policies are going to come down, whether it's state legislature, and how are we going to be able to gain any revenue from online sales. I'm not sure about that. That's a mixed bag.
Now, when it comes to the issues that we're talking about, obviously, retail is one of them. Yep. But you mentioned the state legislature. Advocacy is very clearly a big part of what the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce does. Yeah. We just got done with the legislative session. I know you were there every single day. Your thoughts, your takeaways, those issues that you as a chamber really monitored and watched, from a local perspective?
Yep. Sure. We have a government affairs committee, and that kind of takes the lead on state issues. And so last summer, we had some subcommittees formed to kind of ferret out which issues the chamber should be prioritizing for this coming session. So we put a legislative action plan together. I take that up, and then I start looking at the bills that are coming out, talking with legislators. One of the neat things about our region here, Brian, I don't know if people understand this. We have 30 legislators that represent our two counties, our two communities, our region. 30, 10 senators and 20 state reps. We have a tremendous amount of influence. We need to capitalize on that. And so one of the things we're doing is we're going to continue to communicate with our legislators about our priorities. So what happened in the session, I'd say it's kind of a mixed bag. I don't think anybody was really looking for the golden egg coming out of the legislature this session. For me, it was very interesting to watch the process. You have a new administration. You've got new players there, and then you've got a handful of new legislators all over the place. You've got the veteran legislators that are trying to control the process. For me, it's very process-driven. But we did have some pretty significant issues that we jumped in on. Infrastructure funding options. The state legislature, we asked them to do a study on what kind of funding options are available to local political subdivisions for infrastructure specifically. And that ended up as an amendment in one of the budget bills in the last week. So we hope legislative management picks that up. Behavioral health issues. We wanted some, we pushed for licensing reciprocity for behavioral health, because behavioral health issues are huge in our region in our state. Other than that, general tax incentives, we watch a lot of general businesses. The blue laws issue, we came within 2 votes of the Senate of getting that done. I'm going to guess it's going to come back next session, and we'll get those 2 votes. General business issues. But you talk about trying to reach our members from an advocacy standpoint. One of the things I ask is, what are the issues you watching? What's pertinent to your industry? It might be the building industry. It might be the oil and gas industry. It might be the banking industry. It might be real estate industry. Those are the things that the Chamber, because of our wide reach, we have a process of which we can weigh in, and we can support, communicate to our legislators, hey, this is important to our members. So that's kind of nice in some regards. So we're not tied down specifically. So it's a fun. I have a little background in this, so it's fun for me.
So Scott, talk to me about access. And that's one of the things we hear so often from people who come to this community or come to this state is that, the governor, it's not unusual to see the governor eating out one night.
Right.
Just him and his wife. It's not unusual to see your elected official at church with you or anything like that. The access to our leadership, both at a state level as well as a local level, is something I don't think is as common everywhere else. Now, you've obviously worked in other areas.
Right.
You want to speak to that?
Yeah. I'll tell you, I get a big smile on my face. People ask me from my homeland, they said, what's the biggest difference between working political arena here in North Dakota and in Wisconsin? And that's exactly what I say, Brian. Access. I cannot tell you how awesome it is to be able to see the lieutenant governor at the grocery store or see your U.S. senator at the movie theater. Local officials as well. But one of the core things that the Chamber does and takes pride in is providing access to our elected officials. So again, we may not have all the answers, but we are going to be that vehicle. So if you have an issue with a downtown ordinance, we can probably set up a meeting and get access to the commissioners, state legislature, U.S. Congress. We are that vehicle, and it's great. And for people who don't know, we're in the capital city region. We got some of the best access of anybody in North Dakota.
Well, the conversation that you and I had before the show even started was about those public officials who have put their hand up. Those public officials, the ones you just talked about having all that access to, it is a two-way street. And these people are business people in our community. They are members of our community. They are your soccer coaches. They are your troop, and they're your Boy Scout leaders. They are the ones who are volunteering. Now, whether you agree or not, whether you like their positions or not, they are the ones who have run. They're the ones who, especially at a local level, at local and state level, put in the time for not a lot of money, for not a lot of glory, but they're doing it because they genuinely think it's the right thing to do. And again, that is a noble cause, and it is one that they deserve our thanks for, whether you agree with them or not.
Yeah.
It is a tough job.
Yeah, it's a process, and again, not everybody raises their hand and says, "Hey, I'll serve." And I haven't agreed with. I mean, I've been doing this for a long, long time. I haven't agreed with everybody I've worked for and or against, but I still have the same amount of respect. The fact that they raised their hand and said, "Yes, I'll serve."
Absolutely. So with that, Scotty, we're going to get into our last break of the show here on Super Talk 1270. And when we come back, we're going to talk more about what the Chamber has coming up on their calendar. And welcome back, everyone, to the Dakota Housing Network on Super Talk 1270. I'm your host, Brian Ritter, joined today by my guests for our last segment of the show, Bismarck-Mandan Chamber of Commerce President Scott Meske. Scotty, you guys got some events coming up at the Chamber.
Yeah.
You guys got some things.
We always have some things going, which is, the staff we have kind of a rhythm at the Chamber, and we have some big events like our annual dinner, about 1,000 business people in January. And then we have things like our golf outing, which is coming up, our golf scramble on June 12th. Great place to get to do some networking and do some business. Sure. But we've got something new here.
So let's talk about your something new, and that's Lemonade Day.
It is.
Lemonade Day is something that you had done. I mean, I know it's a national program, but you had done it up in Williston.
Yep, we did.
Now you've since brought the program here to Bismarck-Mandan, and it truly is a youth entrepreneurship event.
Yeah, there's if you go on lemonadeday.org, you can find the original story of what happened, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago, when a middle school daughter went to his dad and went to her dad and say, I want a turtle. And yes, well, instead of me writing a check, why didn't you earn it? Well, how am I going to earn it? And then, I'm going to have a lemonade stand. And he watched her struggle and then realized there's a need and a niche to be able to help young people learn how to start and run their own business. Thus, Lemonade Day was born. It's in over 60 cities in the United States. Williston, this is their third year, Williston, North Dakota. And we're going to give it a shot here in Bismarck and Mandan. And we have our staff is absolutely just hitting it out of the park. We have 2 city champions, Jenna Gullo from United Way and John Bollinger from the Bismarck Larks are our 2 city champions. So you're seeing them all over the place. You're seeing them on advertising and television, and we do radio spots. But basically, Brian, what we're trying to do is reach our youth between 3rd and 8th grade and give them the tools and the knowledge to at least think about starting and operating their own business. The coolest thing about this is that there's also a mentor guide. So a parent, an older sibling, a neighbor, a teacher can mentor this young person through the process. So it takes some things like a business plan, location, what's your stand going to look like? Do you have any employees? Are you going to donate any of your proceeds? Even up to your recipe. It teaches them all the ins and outs. So they're able to earn money on their own with their own ingenuity, their own innovation. We're pretty excited. So not to go on about it, but we are a month away. It's on June 17th, and in Mandan and Bismarck, you could see. Now, I don't know, because the stats we have, between 250 and 280 kids that have signed up, and usually about half of them actually complete the program and have a stand. You could see somewhere between 100 and 150 lemonade stands on one day in our communities. And then we do a little reception for them afterward at the end and celebrate youth entrepreneurism.
Scott, now that's awesome. And I would tell you, even in my own house, my 7-year-old daughter, Claire, she's only going to be a 2nd grader. And so when my wife, Kim, heard about this, she goes, can she do it? I said, well, she's not old enough yet. But I can tell you they're already thinking about it. They're already thinking about it. Her, my daughter, Claire, and her best friend, Addie, down the street, are already talking about next year's lemonade stand. And so it's a cool thing. I mean, you're taking that piece of Americana, that kid's lemonade stand, and you're putting a practical, real-world spin on it, and trying to kind of stir up that spirit of innovation.
Yeah. So we would ask. We had some great partners that stepped up in a big way, and BMDA too. We appreciate you guys stepping up. We had a bunch of them. So we're kind of closed off with the sponsorship sort of thing. But if a business out there is still interested in getting involved, contact the chamber, because we could make you a location. Because a safe location for stands is one of the challenges we have. Because there are young entrepreneurs out there, maybe in apartment complexes or places where they can't put up a stand on their own. So if you're a local business in Mandan or Bismarck, and you said, you know what, this is great, I want to be a sponsor, I want to be a location, a safe location, contact the chamber. We'll get you hooked up with somebody who needs a safe location.
Now, those are some future leaders.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're our next generation future leaders. But the chamber also has the Leadership Bismarck-Mandan program, which I've gone through. Everyone on our staff at the BMDA has gone through it. And you guys have been using that program to develop future leaders for going on 20 years now.
Yeah.
And you just had a graduation, and they had some other cool things there.
Yeah, absolutely. Part of the thing, the Leadership Bismarck-Mandan program is probably one of our premier programs that the chamber's been offering. And I think it's, somebody told me it was 27 or 28 years. We've had some pretty prominent officials in our region go through that early on. Part of the Leadership Bismarck-Mandan program, first of all, it's pretty exclusive. We only take 18 per year. The applications we usually start taking in July and August, so it's kind of kind of an exclusive thing. Part of the success of that is putting together a community project, and so we split the 18 up into 3 teams of 6. And they get to choose and work on a community project that makes a difference. We just had our project presentations yesterday of this class. They're talking about doing a musical heritage walking tour here in Dykeshorn Park here in Mandan, representing the North Dakota Music Hall of Fame inductees. There's 4, by the way. Something that's really unique and would be outstanding for that park. We also had a group that put together a thing called Feedback, where they take leftover food that's already been prepared, freshly prepared. They take it and find a place to donate that. And to have that, and we're working with HIT and working with Carrie's Kids, and oh my gosh, this group, I was moved. And then the other group we had, they studied and did an extensive study of the school transportation issues in Bismarck, and busing and walking and parents dropping off. They did a study and a survey. They had the information the Bismarck school system is going to be able to take and grow on. Those are just 3 examples. Other little things you might recognize. The Universal Playground in Mandan was a leadership program. Art in the Alley Art. I don't know who Art is. No, but Art in the Alley, which was a phenomenal project that came from Leadership Bismarck-Mandan. So we're really, really proud of that program and the impact. Not all projects have that kind of visibility, but they all have an impact on the people going through the class.
Well, if you to add another one to that list, Nathan Schneider, who's on the BMDA staff, was part of a leadership field project group a couple years ago, and it was the friendship benches.
Oh yeah,
I mean the friendship. If you've been to an elementary school in Bismarck or Mandan lately, and you go either it's in the lobby or it's in the playground, you'll see these benches, and they're room for 2 kids, and they're made up of these brightly colored pieces of material, and they're just rainbows. I mean, they're fantastic to look at, and the intent is to have kids be able to sit there. If you've got a child who's feeling sad, feeling lonely, the idea is for that child to be able to sit there on that bench and someone's going to come over and pick him up, be their friend. Those types of real applications. My girls and I were just at the school playground a couple weeks ago playing over the weekend, and there was that friendship bench.
Yeah.
And so there are definitely practical applications that come out of that program.
Yeah.
It's so well received.
It is, and it's really exciting to see how these people that start in September, not knowing what the heck they got themselves into, go through a 9-month immersion process of issue days of government, law enforcement, healthcare, education, everything that makes our communities what they are. They go through this program, and at the end, they figure out how they can contribute to the communities. And I'll tell you, yesterday there were a lot of smiles, a lot of relieved looks. Graduation's next week here at the Baymont, so we're very, very excited about the program.
So, Scotty, we got just a couple minutes left here. Just talk about a couple more events you got coming up. You mentioned the Golf Scramble.
Yeah, Golf Scramble. It's a big thing. We're going to be at Hawk Tree this year, and it's going to be kind of fun. I would encourage everybody to get your businesses together and challenge each other.
So, can you still sign up for the Golf Scramble?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we still have some hole sponsorships left. If you're interested in sitting at a hole and meeting everybody that comes through, or put a team together, contact the chamber and 223-5660, or go on bismancc.com.
Now, if you've got another event you got coming up tonight.
Oh yeah,
the chamber is famous for chamber mixers.
We are. Yep.
Tonight you've got another edition.
We got probably one of the biggest ones we have. It's McQuaid's distributing members. This is where the networking happens. Bring your business cards, bring your elevator speech, and figure out who you can meet that will change your business. And I've had people tell me, Brian, that their business has changed because of who they met at XYZ Mixer or whatever month. So we have mixers every month. This is one of the bigger ones we have, and looks like it's going to be good weather.
Very good. So if you want to learn more about the chamber, if you want to learn more about how to get involved, you heard Scotty say, bismarck.mandan.com, 223-5660.
Right.
Best way to find somebody. You'll probably get a very nice lady named Mary.
Yep,
Mary's fantastic.
The voice of our chamber. Yep.
Mary will send you back to Scotty or to Beckett or to Schwieters or to David or Ryan, anyone else.
Chelsea, if you're a
Chelsea,
member.
the great time.
Yep.
Scotty, thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you, Brian.
Thank you for everything the Bismarck-Mandan Chamber